Hi guys, this is Lachette from Scarlet Moon Creations, and I'm back with my mid-July reading wrap-up video. So we're a slightly different angle, but I mean the angle is out of laziness. Usually this nightstand here is in front of me and therefore the camera and tripod are on it, but I have the tripod on the floor and it only goes this high. But the trade-off is, you can see, a stack of books. Anyway, let's talk about the first three books I read in the month of July. I went back and forth for a while trying to figure out how I should split these up because y'all know I don't know how to shut up. But talking about these three and then leaving the other five for the full July wrap up next video seems best. These are longer for the most part, and none of these are read for a readathon. So yeah, let's jump right in. The first book I finished in the month of July was Rafe, a Buff Male Nanny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This is book number 1 in her Loose Ends series, and it's an adult romance. I loved this book. I have been craving romance, and I think I mentioned it in my last wrap up. I have been craving romance, and this was the next book I wanted. Rebecca Weatherspoon was an author that I had seen recommended by Noria Reads and someone else. And then Mina from Mina Reads mentioned another book by this author, and I was like, okay, that's 3 for 3, and they all, each 3 different books, and they all sound like right up my alley. And Rafe, I believe, was the one mentioned by Noria, so I went with that. And I was not disappointed. This is about a buff male nanny, which is unique. We have 2 characters. One is a black woman who was a bit of a prodigy, and she wound up becoming a doctor at a very young age, and she's a heart surgeon, and she has 2 daughters with her ex-husband who basically fucked her over in life, at least romantically and relationship wise. She's living in LA, I think it is, and her current nanny just ups and leaves. I don't even know if that's like a plot convenience, but I was upset from the beginning. Like, who the hell just leaves? Okay. And her 2 daughters are under the age of 6, 5, I think. Not that young, but they are starting preschool soon, I think. So anyway, cue the strong need for a nanny. In comes Rafe, who is ginger, tall, buff, covered in tattoos, and rides a motorcycle. But he is a long-time experienced live-in nanny. He's great. I love the relationship. I like the chemistry. I love the girls. Everything was believable. I wish it was longer. That was my biggest issue with this book. It wasn't long enough. I wish we had got more on-screen time to see the relationship develop. I wish we had gotten to see more of Rafe's relationship with the daughters develop, because I am a fan of like kids in romances. So like people who have kids, whether we're seeing an established relationship where they have children, or it's, people who have kids from a previous relationship. I just like to see that connection and how people relate with their own kids and with someone else's kids as well. One done well. And I haven't read too many of that outside of fan fiction. But I gave this 4 stars, and I read the ebook from the library. I can't wait to read more Rebecca Weatherspoon. The problem is the New York Public Library only has Zenny and one other book. And I want to read the other books, the other series before this, because Loose Ends, I found out in the back of the book, Rebecca explains how Loose Ends is taking characters that have shown up as secondary, tertiary characters in her previous series and, you know, giving them a romance, a partner, a lover in this series. So I want to read the others. Next up, I read book 2 in the Parasol Protectorate, Changeless by Gail Carriger. Now, I started this series last year. I enjoyed it, so I wanted to read more. And again, still on that romance kick. I needed more romance in my life. So I did pick this up. So, we're following Alexia, whose preternatural abilities mean that she can basically steal the powers from vampires, werewolves, and ghosts. Or not the powers, but make them human. In the ghost case, she's sending them off to wherever souls go. So they become non-existent, basically. And she is now married to Lord Macon, who is the alpha leader of the local London werewolf society. I forgot to mention, this is like a Victorian historical fiction, steampunkish thing. So, in book 1, Alexia and Lord Macon meet and things happen. It's not romance focused. The romance is important to the plot, particularly in book 2, but it's not the main plot. So both Alexia and Lord Macon are important to the British government, and there are appropriately called hijinks and things like that, but I continue to like their relationship because it's not very straightforward. They both act like they don't love each other, and are highly annoyed by each other, but they do love each other, and they do annoy each other, but it's funny. I also like the secondary characters who are very interesting. We got to see more of Lord Macon's old pack and Alexia's sister, so that was interesting. The ending of this, though, that hurt my heart. Like, this is my experience with this series, book 1 and majority of book 2, was like, this is very lighthearted. Like, there's some serious stuff going on, but it's dealt with in a very light way. But the ending, I was like, oh, seriously? No, it's a misunderstanding, but not one I'm happy about. Not at all. So I definitely need to get to the next book, Blameless. Now I know why it's titled that. So I gave that 4.5 stars, and I read the ebook from my library, an adult paranormal romance. The last book I'll talk about in this video is Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and wow, this is literary fiction slash magical realism. So I read Pet earlier this year and loved it, but that was a young adult, potentially. Okay, so we're following Ada, our main character, who is Igbo, which is a ethnic group in Nigeria, and we follow her through her life up until, I guess, late 20s, maybe early 30s, but like from birth. And Ada is born basically with spirits sharing her body, or possibly just her mind, but definitely sharing space with her own soul, and they're not supposed to be there. So we follow Ada as she's born, or as the spirits are born into flesh with her, and growing up, and them sort of taking over her body in certain situations. There are lots of, not lots, but several traumatic events, from emotional things like her mom no longer living with them, going away to another country to work for the most part, to something that happens to one of her siblings, to a on the page rape experience, and various other things. Hi guys, this is Editing Lachette here, and I just wanted to give some trigger warnings really quick. So, trigger warning for rape, attempted rape, suicide ideation, and attempted suicide. All of this, like, on the page, you see it as it's happening. I guess for others, like, content warning for cheating, and I think that's it. If there's anything else, I'll list all of them down in the description below. And it was very interesting. It was a little bit of a struggle, not so much because of the cultural differences, because I have met people who are Nigerian American, Igbo American before, but also read other books with a similar cultural basis. So I didn't know going into this that this would be sort of literary fiction, and that's not something that I really enjoy. They are very character focused and based, but for whatever reasons, I don't often connect emotionally enough with the characters to really care about what's going on. Like, I feel that this is an important book and it was very well written. I think that some would struggle with it, but if you're a regular reader of literary fiction, it shouldn't be as difficult, I guess. I saw some reviews with people not used to the type of culture, but also the spirituality, the spiritual aspect of the culture. And I feel like if you have been exposed to the idea of pantheons, it shouldn't be too difficult. Obviously, one pantheon of deities and spirits is not the same as the other, particularly if we're looking at European-centric versus in African countries. Obviously not, but there is some similarities. If you've been exposed to African diasporic traditions like Santeria, Vodun, and others, it's somewhat similar as well, I guess I could say. So yeah, that part wasn't strange to me. Those parts I liked. The spirits speaking, because this is multiple perspective, and each deity and spirit has its own personality, so there's a bit of that. I don't want, it's not dissociative identity disorder. Is it disorder? I forget what the DID, I forget what the second D is. But it is not that, though from an outsider's point of view it could be that if you're on a scientific, social science leaning, but I guess that is strange. So yeah, it's multi-perspective. And the deities are not all female, or female presenting as Ada is. So there's also some gender fluidity rep, gender queer rep, and it was interesting. This is probably, personally, one of the better literary fiction books that I've read. Better for me, is what I mean. Like, I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed most literary fiction that includes other, or I should say Black American literary fiction. I struggle with Toni Morrison, for example. But I think part of it is the foreignness. Like, while I have exposure to this culture and similar ones, it's still not one I can say I'm totally comfortable and familiar with. Like, these are my people. Obviously they're not. So somewhere in the city, guys. But I was exposed enough to enjoy this more, and then it's foreign enough, not foreign strained, but foreign, not American, not an American experience that I'm used to, that made it more interesting, if that makes any sense. There's nothing wrong at all with this book. The timeline is not always linear, I will say that as well. And there was one of the gods or spirits that shared life with Ada that I would have liked to hear more from, but this is a young person. And this is Own Voices, as Akweke Emezi identifies as gender queer, I believe, and gender fluid and non-binary. So I gave this 3.5 stars, and I do recommend to check it out. I'm glad I read this. I think also I was going into this expecting it to be kind of like Pet, which is a little bit more heavily leaning on the magical realism side of things, and this was kind of very light on that. So those are the first 3 books I read in the month of July. Let me know if you've read any of these. What did you read in the first half of the month of July. My July reading wrap up with the stats will probably be coming next week. So like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want more. Like I said, next week will be another video, and I will see you guys in the next one.